At Toyota, safety isn't optional. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense Standard. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. That's like buying bubble wrap and paying extra for the air in the bubbles. Lease a 2020 Highlander LE all-wheel drive for as low as $99 weekly at 2.49% APR for 48 months with $5,700 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today. At Toyota, safety's always included. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. Why would safety be extra? That's like buying a TV and finding out the remote is extra. It's time to Toyota. Lease a 2020 Corolla LE for as low as $60 weekly at 1.69% APR for 60 months with $0 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today.
Welcome aboard the USS Future Imperfect, brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network and ThisWeekinGeek.net. I am your Lieutenant Commander, though I really should promote myself at some point. I am Mike the Birdman, and I'm not alone as I trek through the whatever the hell we're calling plot device nebula this week. I am joined by my intrepid crewmates who board various positions aboard this starship. I'm joined in the great state of Colorado
by Steve Megatron Phillips.
And of course, the wilds of Michigan and the true scientist among us,
Aaron Pollyea. How's it going?
And my intrepid co-host from ThisWeekinGeek.net, captain of the Garbage Scow.
Let's just get this done. Like, this would be over so bad.
The torture. The torture.
I'm one of the stupid Wall-E, Herbie the Robot bullshit things that are in the show. They literally have Roger Rabbit style cartoon characters repairing the ship now.
So if you can't guess what we're going to be talking about, we are talking about the finale and the last couple episodes of Star Trek Discovery Season 3, which is streaming across CBS All Access and various platforms around the world. And, well, it's over for now, I guess.
I know I'm going to get this because you're going to get it for review. I'm going to get the Blu-ray to check out, and I'll have to give it a second watch. And I don't think my opinion on the programming will change, but what I'm most interested in is if they produced any behind-the-scenes stuff. I want to compare what the production was like for seasons 1, 2, and 3, because there is clearly a feel of this being so discombobulated. I want to see how they spin the behind-the-scenes productions on this, because something I don't know. I've never seen like there's Jumping the Shark, and this show was already not a favorite amongst us, but there is a point now where it almost feels like 12 different shows that each episode is made by. It feels like the show of this season was produced by like some Google AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because
like they made it watch like 300 hours or 500 hours or 20,000 television hours of programming, and then said write a season.
It's funny because.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was going to say, like, we all started off with the first couple episodes of season 3 being fairly, dare I say, optimistic, because it felt like, okay, it's new, it's different, kind of feels like Stargate and something else. Andromeda, but we're like, okay, you have our attention. What are you going to do with it? And then it was like a balloon with the air let out of it going.
Right after episode 3, episode 4, it was like they were on a ship and they're going the right way, and then they blew a hole in the bottom of the ship and then sank almost immediately.
Was that the junkyard episode?
Oh, the junkyard episode. God.
I think it was episode 4. Was it 3 or 4? The first episode was where we didn't Burnham pretending to be drunk, which we were pissed at, but overall it ended with the idea of, okay, well, they're going to rebuild the Federation. The second episode was the first episode, I think, of the entire series, where it didn't focus on Burnham.
And that one was actually okay.
Yeah, that was
okay. Yeah.
The third episode I remember being the one I liked the most. I just don't remember what it was about.
I remember the one I liked the most this season. The one I liked the most this season was the Trill episode, because I thought that character was genuinely interesting, and then they kind of pissed her away.
The CGI was terrible with it, but other than that, it was.
Episode 3 is People of Earth, where they go back to Earth and nothing makes sense.
Yeah,
okay, that's where I was. Huh?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one where they have Earth is unable to detect anything at Saturn because they've lost all their technology back to like the 16th century.
Even though they have a giant space shield for the planet.
Oh right,
yeah, and faster than light ships. And
it was episode 4. It wasn't 3. They episode 4 is the Trill one. I think.
I didn't think it was so early in the season.
Trill, yeah.
Honestly, the best episode of the season was the second one where they didn't have Burnham in it at all.
Yeah.
And it was still bad, but it was better. It was better than any of the other episodes.
Well, I was just glad to see like Saru doing something, and then everybody else had something somewhat constructive, and you thought you were going to get something decent with the season, even though it took left field and you had no idea that it was going to be that bad.
If they erased Georgiou from that episode entirely, then it would have been fine.
It would have been like a standard Star Trek episode almost, just having them deal with some problem that they didn't know how they were going to get out of.
It would have been a TNG or Stargate C episode, which would have meant that it's still the best episode of the show. Then, just as a recap, episode 5 was Die Trying, which is that's where they go to the
Sonatal.
Yeah. Headquarters, and again, I think is that the one where they introduced
Vance.
Yeah, and David Cronenberg's character, which
both of them were great.
Both of the characters are great. They're just in the wrong show.
Yeah. And here's the thing, guys. We all think that like David Cronenberg is amazing in the show. What's his character's name and what's his motivation?
David Cronenberg doing Cronenberg thing.
It's David Cronenberg doing his best impression of himself.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't know a thing about this character at all. We know nothing about him,
and you never find out.
When he does interviews, or when he would film his movies in the late 80s, early 90s, when he went away from just being pure body horror and did some more psychological weird stuff like Naked Lunch and M. Butterfly and all that, when he would do interviews talking about the scripts and how difficult it was to adapt things and how cerebral some of the films had become that he was making, like I realized, I'm like, wait, he's not even acting. That's just who he is when he talks to people. So they cast a director, and he's the best actor in the episode.
Yeah,
that tells you something. Because something tells me he wasn't listening to the direction of the director, and he just did what he would have done if he was filming somebody.
Can you imagine this rookie director or whoever they are directing David Cronenberg? You don't tell David Cronenberg what to do. You let him does what he wants to do.
He's one of the top 3 directors in Canadian history.
Yeah, you just let him go.
In the States, I mean, there's a lot more competition, but if you're going to talk in the genre film category, he's in the top 10 most influential horror and sci-fi directors of the last 50 years. So he knows what he's doing. He's a film school grad, all this sort of stuff. I'm trying to look up the director of the episode, and like they don't even have like there's not even a link to IMDb for them. They're not even like blue linked.
Wow,
well, that's an encouraging sign.
And here's the thing with David Cronenberg. The one of the comparisons I made right at the end of this season is that it feels like there are 13 really short TV movies produced by Roger Corman, where he's giving a random no-name director / writer a chance to do something. And the timetable is you have to write the script in 2 days. It needs to be produced in 2 days. Here, go. That's the kind of quality that we're going with.
The director here, she's a television director that is known for directing single episodes. She's never really called back to direct more than one.
What has she done?
CSI Cyber, Graceland, Limitless, Person of Interest, Elementary, like broadcast TV, like cheapy, crappy shows.
She's doing
Gotham,
procedural type stuff.
Yeah, Titans, SWAT, 13 episodes of Hawaii Five-0, one of the worst cop shows on TV, the newer one. Magnum PI and MacGyver remakes. And the only thing she has done in genre that's not a cop procedural was she did the short trek for Runaway. And
which one was that one?
That's the one where they the girl that ends up being the princess or queen in the second season of Discovery, where Tilly finds her stowed away.
Yeah, and they figure out. She says she figures out how to recrystallize dilithium. Like when Scotty says that's impossible, like 30 years later, and he has to figure out a way of doing it.
Correct. And she's directing a pilot episode of the Clarice Silence of the Lambs TV show that premieres in a couple weeks. That's it. They got this person to direct one of the most famous directors in the world. Something tells me that episode, every scene that he was in, he probably had control over.
I would assume so, for sure.
I would assume so, because they were actually halfway decent.
The scenes that he was in, the camera wasn't constantly shaking and spinning.
Now, there's something that I noticed, and I'm going to jump ahead, because for me, for you guys, this is weeks in the past. For me, this is but mere hours. So I'm watching the final fight scene between the Jolly Green Giant and the Michael Burnham Show, and they're fighting inside Discovery.
Yeah.
And for some reason, did that look like the inside of a Resident Evil movie to anybody else, or was that just me with them fighting? Okay, yeah. I'm not nuts.
Yeah, it looked like the inside of a Resident show, and there was absolutely zero tension in that, because you know that like Burnham gets tossed into this panel for some reason that's there of programmable matter for no reason, and the Orion woman thinks that she's dead. It's programmable matter. It would have safeguards against like people being in there, and the fact that the camera lingers on it for so long, you know Burnham's still alive. There's no tension. Like,
although one funny bit of that scene, Aaron, one funny bit of that scene is when she pukes Lego.
Yeah,
I had a good laugh at that.
Why did you breathe in Lego, you idiot? Like, yeah, I mean,
and you know what?
Did you notice in that last episode also is that every major scene starts with the camera either sideways or upside down, and then it rotates into right side up.
Dutch tilt. Oh God, there's so much about this.
The line of continuity over and over and over again with it, that it removes you from any semblance of immersion.
I actually fast forwarded that section because it bored the crap out of me. So I moved on to a point where, Burnham blows away the Orion lady, and then they're like, "Hey, we're all saved."
She was one of the worst parts of this season.
I hated that actress and that character. Like, I hated the whole aspect of the Orion Syndicate thing.
The makeup looked like something you would have seen out of like Lex.
It looks so cheap.
Like, I've seen better costuming at Dragon Con.
I thought the actress was okay. I can't say she was good, but I can't really say she was bad. She was probably just working as best as she could with really shitty writing and directing. But honestly, there was no the character herself is a one-dimensional mustache twirling villain that there's really no motivation there. And then like this negotiation with Admiral Vance that happens at the near the end of the series here, there's absolutely like all of a sudden she just seemingly turns a corner and becomes a good person. Like, oh yeah, no, we'll give up slavery completely, even though
in 10 years.
It's exactly what
they'll do it, because Burnham is the second coming of Christ and will change everybody's mind.
Yeah, but then it's clear that, remember that there's like the lie detector hologram in there that is also agreeing that she's telling the complete truth, but she's also completely inept at the negotiations and decides, oh, you know what, I don't really want this to happen anyway, and continues the attack later. Everything about that last episode is utter utter shit, even down to like the special effects. Like during that negotiation, did you guys notice that even the FX people don't give a shit enough to show like the treaty that comes up? The treaty that comes up is supposed to be like the emerald chain with the Federation, but they don't use the Federation logo. They put a Starfleet logo on it. No one gives a shit in the show.
Well, that should have been caught by continuity.
That is one of the 22 producers saying, we've never shown the Federation logo. Nobody watching this is going to know what that looks like, because nobody watching our show ever watched Star Trek before. No, they don't want anybody that was a fan before they came in to like the show. They
showed it at the beginning of the season.
Well, they don't remember that.
No, they don't remember that,
and they don't think anybody else will.
God, I hate this show. But you fast forwarded through one of the most amazing parts of this episode. If you fast forward through the fight scene of the giant turbo lift cavern that is inside Discovery, there's somebody online that I actually, with math, with like angles, and they knew determining based on people's height in each of these shots, they could figure out like the focal length of the camera and therefore how large this cavern was.
Yeah,
and it would actually it actually would have difficulty fitting inside of Earth dock. So kilometers and kilometers and kilometers across and tens of kilometers long.
Yeah, because like I thought Discovery is like a science vessel. It's supposed to be fairly small, right?
Well, it's not even that, man.
Well, it depends.
This is what happens when you have entire schools that pump out CGI grads over and over and over again. The proliferation of how easy it is to hire people now. It used to be, when TV was being made, you had about 6 to 10 effects houses you could use pretty much in the world, and they handled all of your special effects. And now you've got hundreds of these small companies of different quality. You don't necessarily have the crazy thing to me is when you find some of these companies that have all these CGI farms, and they're given like, loose descriptions on what to do, and they render it. And there is a difference between a CGI artist and somebody who is a classically trained, like fine arts major that would normally work on a show to give proper scale, proportions, and realistic, tell people how to translate 3D space into art. Because you have talented people that work at all these companies making things, but the bar of entry now is lower. So you get lower quality productions than only the really top tier, I guess like LucasArts,
ILM, stuff like that.
ILM, Weta, and there's a couple of the studios still on the West Coast that are decent, but they're basically being held up doing all the superhero movies. And every TV show is now left with garbage for the most part, unless they can book time with them, because it's mind-boggling how much they mess up scale.
Mm-hmm.
In this show in particular, but it happens in not just, this isn't the only offender. It happens in a lot of other shows. Part of it is, I think, it's because the effects have gotten so cheap. It used to be that effects were so expensive and time-consuming that you kind of had to get it right, or the studio wouldn't pay for it. They would say that's not up to snuff.
This image that you just dropped in there is just insane. There's no way that's bigger than the Enterprise D.
So in order to fit that giant turbo lift cavern, you actually have to expand Discovery out. Now, canonly, they've already said that like Discovery's about 750 meters long, which is far larger than a Galaxy class starship. But in order to fit that turbo lift cavern, and you actually have to expand Discovery out even further to almost, more than 2.5 kilometers long in order to fit it in. And
you know what it is? It's the magic runway in Fast and the Furious, was it 6 or 7, where they're chasing a plane down for what appears to be 25 minutes while it races at full speed down the runway, and somebody put the runway to scale, and it crossed half of Europe.
And,
so,
and you know, the other
it's
part
Fast and Furious logic.
But the other part of it is in that same scene, we see inside the turbo lift, we see the decks of Discovery. We actually see how many decks Discovery has, and it's actually reasonable size when you just look at the decks. It's comparable to, it's a little smaller than a Constitution class. So, you know, I think it's 17, 18 decks tall. And Michael Burnham, when she jumps out into the turbo lift shaft and then free falls, you can time it, and it's 4.5 seconds, and it comes out to be like 99.5 meters, which is actually 1.5 Constitution classes high. So it's really, really dumb, and it seems like that's nitpicking, guys, and it is. The thing is that it breaks immersion when you're watching a show, especially one that is semi-hard sci-fi, let's say, that is Star Trek. When you have something that is so blatantly outside of reality, where it's just magic. This is magic. There's no way it can fit in to this ship, let alone the universe. How can you?
I always go back to, but even Stargate in the silly episodes tried to root itself in some sort of logical explanation. I mean, at this point now, I'm doing a rewatch of that show. There's an episode where Earth gets its first interstellar spaceship, and MacGyver is upset because they wouldn't let him name it the Enterprise. And I'm thinking they should have just let him name it the Enterprise and just renamed Stargate into Star Trek at that point, because that was circa early 2000s, right around the time that the Enterprise TV show was dying. And maybe we could have had Stargate just become Star Trek.
Star Trek with Richard Dean Anderson would have been awesome.
There's an episode where he's captured when they go back in time to 1969. Spoiler, Mike, they go back in time. And he's captured by the military, and they think he's a Russian spy because he's got like futuristic tech. And they ask him what his name is, and he says his name is James T. Kirk. And then when they grill him, he's like, no, it's Luke Skywalker. So, like, at that point, as silly as that is, that makes more sense than what we're seeing here.
And it's not just like the weird special effects, because I mean, all throughout this season, and especially in the last parts of it, there's lots of really poor special effects. Like when they're in the mirror universe, they go to Risa. Risa, whenever we've visited
instantaneously,
before,
by the way.
Yeah, well, that's a different thing. I actually ran all the numbers on that. I can talk about that. But Risa has no rings and 2 moons every other time we've seen Risa. But here in Discovery, it has rings and no moons. Like, there's no fact checking on this. Set a course for Risa, warp 9. And warp 9 in the old scale is 729 times the speed of light. And they are actually at Epsilon Indi, as they said at the beginning of the episode. And Epsilon Indi to Epsilon Ceti, which is where Risa is 84.64 light years. This is my math. So that means if they could sustain warp 9, which is not very likely at that time, let's put it that way, when Enterprise, the more advanced ship, can barely sustain warp 8 for a couple hours, they would have to travel for 42 days, 9 hours, 4 minutes, and 23.7 seconds if they were able to hold that speed, but they're to Risa in less than 3 seconds.
Well, don't forget, we're working now on Spaceballs logic. They just went ludicrous speed.
Yes, they've gone plaid.
Exactly. Like we're not working with people that care about logic.
But here's the comparison. In this same very show, in Star Trek Discovery Season 1, they give a very specific distance, and I think it's in episode 3 or 4. They give a very specific distance that they are away from the, I think USS Glenn? And they say, okay, well, we're going to be in the shuttle, and we're going to go to warp 1. And you can literally sit with a stopwatch and click off, because you know what warp 1 is. Warp 1 is the speed of light. And it takes exactly the amount of time that you would think it would. Like, down to the 10th of a second. They come out of warp. That's exactly the distance they would have traveled.
Well, that's also Season 1 when they thought they were making a real show. and not a tax write-off.
Well, and that was also, I think, some of the original concepts and things from Brian Fuller before he jumped ship because of the stupidity.
The first 4 episodes of the show were the ones he worked on.
And you can tell somebody cared. Somebody cared. No one cared.
Brian Fuller cared, and
they didn't. So he left.
Some details have come out about his non-disclosure. He's not allowed to talk about what was canceled and all of the apparent heated arguments he had with the production company. Heated arguments. And like he knew they were flushing the show down the tubes. So to the point where I don't believe he's worked with CBS or Paramount since.
Wow. I mean, I don't blame him. If this is what's being produced for Star Trek and it's just shitting all over the franchise.
Well, and he used to write for it too. So, I mean, he obviously cared.
Now, to look at Discovery Season 3 as a whole, because we really haven't talked about the episodes per se. We've talked about bits and pieces of them. How do I break this down? Looking at the overall narrative arc of the season, finding out why the burn happened, why the Federation fell apart, why the galaxy's in such disarray as it may be, what worked, what failed, why did it fail, why did parts succeed? Discuss.
I have very, very crass descriptions as to why this show failed, but I won't discuss them because just out of being polite. But the show, this season of the show, taking out of account all of the behind the scenes drama, the whole idea that this season was made to fulfill contractual obligations, and that the only reason it even got renewed now because they thought it was canceled. That's why the show ended up getting even worse because they gave up on any quality control they even had left. Taking out of the pandemic, take that out of it, take out the bad acting, and take out all of this stuff. The show fails because it relies on a formula that they've been using since Lost with this production company, which is build a mystery in the first episode, barely reveal anything, and then rush to the conclusion in the last 30 minutes. And then repeat the exact same cycle for every single season. If you're going to have a show with an overarching story, design it to run multiple seasons, especially when you only have, 13 to 14 episodes a season. Babylon 5 had 110 episode arc written before the show came out. They didn't know if they were going to get there. So the idea was, here's our B story, or that's ultimately going to become the A story. And we're going to work towards that. We're still going to we have a series arc. Then we have our season arc. And then we have our individual episodes. Like each episode can be watched on its own without the need for, unless there's like a specific 2-parter, without the need to have to watch in a specific order. But if you watch a whole season in order, you get a story and a conclusion or a cliffhanger for the next season. And then you end up with this whole picture, this whole grand story if you watch all 5 seasons. That was sort of how serialized television that wasn't like a soap opera was designed and envisioned in the late 80s is when you sort of started seeing that pop up with Wise Guy, and some of the other syndicated TV shows started doing that when they were getting these like 100 episode orders back in the day, or multiple season 22 episode orders. And then really started around 90, 91 with the Highlander TV show and all the productions that were being made for dirt cheap in Vancouver for whatever, station or syndication that you wanted. And that was the formula everything followed for about 10 to 15 years. And then Lost destroyed all that because they thought they could hotshot it. These shows are hotshotted in that we're going to sell you on a mysterious hook in the first episode and then have no idea how we're going to conclude it. Each of these shows and each of these seasons are presented as if they're trying to hook the advertisers to say, look, the audience is going to get hooked by this crazy twist or this or this mysterious MacGuffin, and then they don't deliver because they write themselves into a corner. It's the burn. And what was the burn? Oh, a emotionally stunted, developmentally disabled kid cried and the world burned.
It was I honestly, when I watched the episode and that was the reason, I assumed that the burn was going to be for a stupid reason. I assumed that it was going to not make sense. This exceeded my expectations to the point of I was laughing.
Yeah, same here.
What was supposedly an emotional scene, like, oh my God, this kid, his mother died. I was laughing at how ridiculous that was.
I thought that based on the logic they built in their own universe, not saying it's logical, but I was under the assumption because everything has to do with Burnham. It has to. Everything has to revolve around her. I thought it was going to be the burn was created. They were going to find something stupid like when she was flown forward in time, and she didn't even realize that like a piece of her spacesuit broke off into another time and it caused some sort of disastrous ripple effect.
That would have made more sense.
With all of us, angry and bickering about it out of the way, let's sort of just finish off these last, was it 4 episodes we were supposed to be talking about, I think, because we did 5.
Yeah, because the question that I'd pose to the floor is, what failed this season? I think we've covered that pretty adequately. What succeeded?
Nothing.
And then I would argue parts of this season worked. Parts.
Ideas and concepts that weren't realized.
I think for me, because I have a slightly different viewpoint on that, I'm not as entrenched as you guys seem to be with it, and maybe that gives me a little bit more joyful optimism.
You have some sort of blind crush on Tilly. That's the only reason you like the show.
No, actually, my favorite character, I like her a lot. My favorite character is actually Stamets. I like him.
I cannot stand him.
And I'm starting to like
At Toyota, safety isn't optional. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense Standard. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. That's like buying bubble wrap and paying extra for the air in the bubbles. Lease a 2020 Highlander LE all-wheel drive for as low as $99 weekly at 2.49% APR for 48 months with $5,700 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today. At Toyota, safety's always included. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. Why would safety be extra? That's like buying a TV and finding out the remote is extra. It's time to Toyota. Lease a 2020 Corolla LE for as low as $60 weekly at 1.69% APR for 60 months with $0 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today.
Trill lady, I can't remember her name. Nadira, is it? I really like those 3 characters.
Again, I don't know the characters' names. Stamets, I barely even remember the name.
Yeah, and that's my problem with this season is there are individual character moments, but you're not given enough for it to shine. When you took Michael Burnham out of the equation for episode 2, that's when this show was the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
When you got moments with Michelle Yeoh as Captain Giorgio and Sonequa Green, occasionally you got some really good chemistry there, but it was never consistent.
Michelle Yeoh belongs on a show that's not Star Trek. She belongs on like a space pirate show.
And that's the thing too. I wonder how they're going to handle the Section 31 show.
Oh, sure it can.
It did get canned?
It was supposed to enter production, and it's now on hold.
Because of COVID? Or
no, because there's the new head of Paramount hates it.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess.
I wouldn't want to watch that at all. I don't want to watch a show about villains.
No.
Because the whole does every.
No, if it was more of a 24 type show, that would be okay. But
yeah, if you gave me spy Star Trek, I'd be okay with that. But I don't want brutality for the sake of brutality.
Not to mention, like, if it's going to be a time travel show protecting whatever, you know what? We've already had that show, and it was called 7 Days in the late 90s, where every episode was traveling back in time up to 7 days to correct issues or errors, or Quantum Leap. We've had those shows. We don't need one where everybody's a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to watch her be cool and badass, but the thing is, Giorgio works in small spits and spurts. I don't think a full hour dedicated to her would necessarily flow. Now, her 2 episodes at the end of the season where she enters the Guardian of Forever, because, okay, we brought that back for some reason.
You forgot Q exists.
Yeah, exactly. Although I thought it was kind of neat how they brought back the Guardian, but I'm thinking this should have been John Delancey. But okay, sure, whatever.
The Guardian talks like it's part of the Q.
Yeah, I didn't think that the Guardian worked at all. I thought it was a really bad idea. It should have been a Q. They try to explain why the Guardian is all of a sudden already on the other side of the galaxy, that it left because of the temporal Cold War, because they were asking him to do things. And the problem is that the Guardian only worked a very specific way, and he could not change the way he sent people through time. So he was incredibly inaccurate at sending people back in time. You might as well just use a warp-capable starship to actually time travel, and it's more accurate. So there's no reason to use the Guardian of Forever, except maybe as a research thing, but definitely not by the time the temporal Cold War is being fought.
So they basically just wanted to use it for, hey, here's a retro callback, right?
Yeah, that's basically the only reason to have it there. And then you're casting a person to play the Guardian. Okay, yeah, fine. The Guardian over however many millennia that it existed before Kirk ever found it. It never developed a personality. It was always this computer. But then in the 900 years since, it's now Carl. It looks different as a ring. Like, it's not even the same ring.
Not to mention, it behaves. The way he's behaving with the newspaper and all sorts. Is behaving like that episode of Voyager where Janeway went into the continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that's very Doctor Who-ish almost.
You know what I mean? Like, it was just like that episode where we finally got to see like how our brains would interpret the continuum.
Yeah,
and that's basically what I saw there. And then I'm like, oh, so it's one of the it's not. Oh, I know why they're doing this. It's because it's the only episode of the show of the original show that Kurtzman remembers,
because everyone loves it, and it like shit all over the memory of that show. And that episode still makes me cry. The Guardian of Forever, man, City on the Edge of Forever is such a good episode.
I think I liked that only because I've never experienced that episode, and I've only known of the history, and maybe Discovery fooled me in that regard, and I'm fully willing to own that. Like I said, the problem I found with this season, but it's also a strength in my opinion, is there were some moments where there were some good character things, but you were never given enough to hold on to. You're never getting enough to care. And Alex has pointed this out, and you guys have all pointed this out. You don't know the characters' names enough. I didn't know Detmer's name until this season. We didn't understand she had PTSD fully until this season.
And I would argue that the way they wrote her, she doesn't.
Yeah,
no, she
there's also
have PTSD. She never has had PTSD. What she comes across as is just being an asshole.
There's another character. Yep. This happens in the last episode of this season, where it's this engineer. I think she's a part of the bridge crew, and she brings a bomb into the turbo shaft or the warp core, and she's rescued by Wally. And you're supposed to care, and I know it's supposed to be a touching moment because she's like, please don't let me die, and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, I must help you.
Well, no, that's the voice of the Sphere.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
so everybody... the show has become Roger Rabbit. It's a fucking Roger Rabbit cartoon now.
Yeah, and note that she walked into the detached nacelle with a chemical explosive to use against a handheld chemical explosive to use against a superconductor that generally uses enough energy constantly to put like to compare that little bomb as like dropping a match onto the sun. It would do nothing.
Yeah.
And she walked into the detached nacelle. And then they show the explosion on the nacelle. Like, how did she walk there? It's fucking detached. And by the way, they say how those nacelles stay attached even though they're detached. Magnets.
Yeah, no. Even
Fucking
I know
magnets.
that.
How do they work? Fucking juggalos making the show now.
That's something that I felt was a real, as Alex pointed out, and I don't think he's wrong on this, the show wants to tell you how to feel. And I think that's a problem very much so with the show, is because you don't develop the relationships and the connections with these characters naturally. Sure, I've seen her on the bridge. Sure, she does pushy button things on the Jarvis artificial intelligence screens or whatever. I don't know her name. I don't care. And I know it's sad when somebody's supposed to make a noble sacrifice, but it doesn't mean anything if there's no name to it. And this is a show that's supposed to be an ensemble cast, but it's almost always the Michael Burnham show. And again, why is she invincible and having like plot armor after plot armor? You can't hit her. Like, the most she's taken is she took a knife to the leg and somehow she managed to win a fight with someone clearly her physical superior.
And in the last couple episodes, her mannerisms and expressions and body language, it's like she gave up on trying to be the stoic character with the pent-up energy. And she even gets like, there's parts of this where it feels like I'm watching a skit comedy show from the early 90s, like In Living Color or Mad TV, where they're pretending to be Starfleet officers. Like she's almost like over exaggerating movements. Or like when she's like running, it's like extending her arms farther than a human would to run, to make it look like how public access TV would do for the effects, and just like turning her head. There's a couple times where I was waiting for her to go, "Oh hell no," in the way she was behaving and talking. It was like they all threw up their hands in the last 3 episodes and gave up trying for anything.
The only moment for her that really stood out to me this season as being somewhat connective to what I think she wanted to accomplish is when the Guardian, Giorgio, and her are standing on the planet, and the Guardian says, "Well, you have to walk through that door. You can go whenever you want." And Giorgio's saying her goodbyes to her and something along the lines of, "You showed me a different way."
Nah, you know what? Why should we care? She's a murderous, genocidal freak.
Yeah.
Who is not the captain from the first episode of season 1.
Yeah.
This is what I don't get, is why does everybody in the show think that they're the same person?
She's clearly not.
Absolutely, yeah.
She treats everyone like shit.
This is literally like, could you imagine if they killed in season 2 or 3 Captain Kirk and he was replaced with the evil eyeliner Kirk and everybody was okay with it?
I think that was the only scene. That was the only scene, though, where I think there was something genuine. No, but I think they wanted to connect.
No, but
it's emotionally manipulative.
It's diluted because and delusional. Like nobody on this crew. They've been together in time of the show, like 4 or 5 months,
maybe a bit longer, maybe a year.
But regardless, they've not known her to be anything but evil, antagonistic, willing to murder anybody, has murdered anybody, eaten people.
Yep, she's eaten Kelpian.
Yes, eaten the people, and they all cry when she's going to die. It's like they have this collective delusion that they all believe it's their captain.
It's like they forget the internal logic. It's like the writers don't remember where the character has come from, and I think that's very evident, as we've all discussed here. There's no continuity, or there's no story notes from episode to episode. But to finish my thought on that scene, speaking purely from an acting standpoint, that's the only point where I kind of felt something, because there's something Burnham says to her. She's like, all my feelings for you are real. I'm thinking, okay, sure, that's a good scene, but as we discussed, there's problems with that scene because of the internal logic. But another thing I liked this season, because I'm going to try and play devil's advocate here as much as I can, is, like I said, I saw moments where things could have been okay, and we all agreed that the first couple episodes showed not promise, potential, but it obviously fell very, very, very short of that. So I guess in conclusion, the show started out of the gate, had a couple of good strides, and then promptly fell face first and tumbled hard.
They decided to run a marathon, and they were running like a 3,000 meter marathon. They got about 200 meters and then diarrheaed themselves and fell down a ditch, and then crows pecked out their eyes.
Now, here is my question to the group, and then we'll close this out. How do you course correct from this?
You don't anymore.
Because they're stuck in the future. They're not going to go back, as far as I can tell. And even like, what do you do from here?
I see.
Nothing.
Nothing. You've had 3 chances, and each season is a course correction from each other. After the first season, they course corrected. After the second season, they course corrected again. No one's going to buy another course correction. Or, well, I don't know. At this point, there's enough people out there that absolutely love the show that maybe they could turn it into a freaking comedy like WandaVision, and it would completely work for those people. But I don't think you can fix this show. Stop it. Do not do any more. Get real writers that actually care. Stop interfering with them from the production standpoint, and actually let science fiction function. Like, it's not fucking hard. You just get people that care. Like, I don't know. I've said before, just pay for my here. This doesn't make sense based on what we know about Star Trek. Hire the goddamn Akutas again, and make sure that they not fix the show as it is now. There's too much.
Other than just a full hack and slap, too dark, and unappealing. They need to do that. Need to cinematographer and the colorist. Everything is oversaturated. It's like everything is so stark and bright and hurts the eyes. And they also need to do one other thing, and that is slow down. You don't have to have constant motion. Camera doesn't have to be moved. There's not a single moment where the camera doesn't move. And you don't have to have MTV 20 cuts per second. You can let a scene linger for emotional resonance. Maybe we would see enemies and bad guys as a threat if they were on screen long enough to seem menacing without having like epileptic seizures, jumping around and having the camera constantly panning in circles, using as if somebody's using a PlayStation controller and just has their finger down on the right analog stick and it's constantly moving, or flipping around and it's like, hey, cool, look what we can do. We can flip and tear and it's like baby's first editing suite. And they've just gone totally over the top on that. And it's not even like style over substance. It's not even stylish enough as it is. It's not a good looking show.
I think
there have been shows that are dark looking. Battlestar Galactica, if you're going to do that dark sort of show where everything is sort of dimly lit, maybe actually film it on film and have film grain involved. Game of Thrones did quite well with it, and some of those episodes were so dark they were even hard to see if you didn't have a good TV. But you know what? It had atmosphere. This show it's like they're trying to copy that, but it doesn't have a cohesive vision or feel to it. And that's all I'm going to say.
I can see that.
I think Discovery, because I think it's going to get picked up again if it hasn't been already.
It is. It's already going into production.
I think they've written themselves into a very difficult corner. And here's one. Like, Saru has left the ship to go help that kid rebuild his life. They've gone back to his home planet to be better, hopefully. The Federation is rebuilding. Discovery can spore drive around the Federation and bring people and ships to this nebula or whatever. Burnham is now the captain. Her arc as a character is now complete. What do you do with that?
I figured it out. You know what this show looks like? It looks like Vivid Video porn parody in the visual quality. Why don't they just turn it into a porno, have everybody wank each other off, and then have a day with it? That's your season 4. Thank you, fuck you, bye.
I mean,
maybe
okay,
but realistically, where do they go from it? I wouldn't say that Michael has had an arc at all yet, because there's not really been a story told at all. There's been things that have happened to her.
I could argue maybe that she's been kind of like, the show wants to put her in charge, but it hasn't yet. So it's like the author and the story are disconnected from each other. Like, do you kind of get where I'm coming from, Aaron?
I do. But the thing is that she's always been in charge because she never listens to orders. She always does exactly what she wants. So she's always in charge.
She's perfect. And anybody who says anything wrong about it, within the context of the show, they're like, well, if you weren't so perfect, I'd be more mad than I already am. Ha 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 ha. Freeze frame for the next episode.
She started a war. She mutinied. She was court-martialed correctly and thrown out of Starfleet. And that's just the start of her insubordination and rule breaking, and how she just goes behind everybody that's in command's back. And after 3 seasons of doing this, almost every single episode of her doing this, she finally gets promoted up. She fails upwards to the point of being captain of Discovery.
But isn't that kind of a mirror of what happens now a lot of times at workplaces in real life?
It's true. You ultimately fail upwards.
It's definitely what Kurtzman has done. He has failed upwards very well.
So here's my predictions for a season 4, because I think, didn't we give our predictions last time at what we thought it was going to be?
Briefly.
And the closest we got was when I was like, I wonder if they're going to make it like from scratch, or is it going to be like Andromeda? And then it ended up being Andromeda. Here's my prediction. The crazy twist that we're going to see in the beginning of the next season is they're going to find a planet that has a bunch of it's going to be a separate cell of Starfleet that broke off from the Starfleet we know. And it's not, and we're going to think it's evil at first, that it's going to be like this totalitarian regime or something. They're going to meet the leader of Starfleet, and they're going to do a genetic scan on this person, probably a female, maybe a male. And we're going to find out it's her genetic great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, and she hasn't had a kid yet. And over the course of the season, we're going to find out that it's Book, or whatever his name is, the father. And this is a colony created by them that somehow got sent back in time and has now lived out the last 500 years. And it's going to be some bullshit like that.
I'm going to say, and this is mostly based upon what I viewed during Picard, this is my prediction, you're going to see Discovery do their own take on the Borg. Because Picard was exactly, and people love the Borg, and Discovery wants to play with the greatest hits.
I think Picard kind of destroyed the Borg, and then people actually hate it.
The only reason I'm bringing that up is because we mentioned the Guardian of Forever. But people love the Borg, so why would they try that trick again?
They're going to want to go cheap, so we're going to see Romulans. Now, how interesting, and they won't do it because it would be cool, but how interesting would it be if what we saw, they find these Romulans and we find out, like, they find them, blah, 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 and the leader is Eric Bana's Nero.
But that
pretty
doesn't,
cool,
that
actually.
doesn't make sense.
Doesn't have to make sense. It has to tie into a property that actually did well that Kurtzman worked on.
Oh, God. All right, if I'm going to make a prediction, since everything seems to be happening around Earth anyway, in like a 20 light year bubble around Earth, as it is, in a once galaxy spanning federation that seemingly only had 300 member worlds because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Since it all takes place around Earth, I am going to say the Federation, as it's coming back together, is going to have a war with a well-known species that they've encountered in the past and warred with in the past, and it's not going to be one that you think of.
It's going to be the Ferengi.
No, because
The Dominion?
No, the Kzinti. Because they mentioned it in and it's going to piss off everyone that is Nevin fans because they're going to write them awful. And it will be the conflict itself will be stupid and contrived, and then the solution will be barely an inconvenience to anybody. But
They join hands and sing Kumbaya.
Yeah, like
No.
like a Cajun character that comes in and kisses like the big bad guy, and then that's okay. That's fine. Everything's fine.
We're at the point now where Kurtzman is going with, well, they want old Star Trek, and I got to go with Star Trek that I know and I like. We're going to have the Frank Gorshin black on one side, white on one side aliens come back, and it's going to be horrendous.
Oh dear.
But those two were the last ones, so that makes complete sense that he would bring them back when they were the last two of their species.
But remember, this takes place before. But this takes place before that, so it'll take place. This is what will lead into their being the last two.
Oh God. Well, folks, I think we've taken up enough of your time. I'm sorry for the subspace communication.
Here we go, Michael. One final one.
Okay.
They're finally going to do something that people have been wanting for a while. They're going to find a way to bring Shatner back, but Shatner is going to end up being one of those stupid space like Greek gods, and he'll wear a toga and wear a crown, and he'll come out and overact like crazy in his fat old guy body, and I'll still watch it.
Oh, dude,
you know what I want in this?
Who he could be? Which god? He could be Bacchus. That would totally freaking work, actually. Like
they don't want to be smart,
drunk and overacting, and like, oh, he just is swilling wine, and
he's going to walk out. He's going to walk out, and they'll be like, "Who are you?" And he'll be like, "I'm Mighty Zeus," and then it'll have like dramatic pause.
If I did have one,
he gets to fight with a giant green space hand. Yes.
If I did have one
Captain
thing,
Kirk from another dimension.
No, it'll be Gorn. It'll all be fights with Gorn. Sorry,
Gorn wedding. I would love to see them fight the Tholians, but that's not going to happen. So anyway, we've taken up enough of your time.
I'd like
with
to
this
see them
episode.
fight the writers. They just bring in the writers from the last season, and all the producers, all 22 of them, and they film it. They're like, oh, we're going to have you all as extras. But what they don't realize is that they actually brought in real baseball bats, and when they beat them to death,
have some Vulcaneers on him and have him do the on far fight.
Yes. Let us know. Feedback at ThisWeekinGeek.net.
Sorry for being so negative the last several episodes, but we
bunch despite.
We're going to do some different things. I think down the line, sort of choice episodes, and there's plenty of other shows we could watch. I just picked up the Sequest Blu-ray set that came out. People used to laugh at, saying they weren't as good as TNG. Are better than 90% of sci-fi. Are we going to be doing sort of like a watch?
I think Aaron had kind of pitched the idea. So, Aaron, why don't you tell the people your idea before we get out of here?
Well, the idea was not watching an entire season of TNG, but each episode of our show, each of us choose an episode from that season of TNG, like from season 1 for the first episode, and we talk about it. And it doesn't have to be like the most amazing episode. It can be a problematic episode because, I mean, in TNG season 1, there are some problematic episodes, and it's okay to talk about those. But
right now, dibs on conspiracy.
Dude, conspiracy. I mean, there's a lot to talk about in that episode.
Okay, so I'm calling it right now. That's my pick. Please let me keep it. So I want the other one.
I think the one I want is The Naked Now. I think that's what it's called.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so that's the one I want to do. So,
do we really want to talk about? Should we count Farpoint or?
Nah. Yeah.
Okay, so then
I would say
we got
stay away. Yeah, no two-parters. No two-parters. I would say stay away from two-parters. And conspiracy and Naked Now. Those are out there. I'll choose something at some point. I'm not sure if I want to choose the very problematic episode to talk about, or actually talk about one of my favorites.
Giant shit tar monster one? Is that what you're afraid of?
No, the one that is incredibly racist and sexist.
Oh yeah. Let's do that one.
I mean,
it's still better than what we watched.
Yeah, and you know what it is? It's still better than any of the episodes of Discovery that I've watched this season, or any of the episodes of Discovery. Period. It's Code of Honor is the episode. Code of Honor.
Yeah, that's. And what's funny is, compared to a lot of TV that was out at the time, it was still more sensitive.
Yeah. So, folks,
in the 80s, they were still doing not blackface, but there was still a lot of yellow face and red face happening a lot back then. And sexism blatantly, like this was their attempt at like trying to address that, and they just didn't handle it well.
But we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yes. So we will have a lot to come in 2021 as we hope to bring some more, not necessarily positivity, but a more critical eye. As long as we're always talking, we're conversing, and we're looking at different viewpoints on different topics in sci-fi, different franchises, movies, themes, books, authors. There's a lot for us to talk about. I'd love to do an episode where we actually talk about our favorite missions to space, our favorite planets, our favorite spatial phenomena. There's going to be a lot of things you're going to learn on this show, and hopefully you will learn along with us. So for This Week in Geek and the Geekcast Radio Network, this has been the USS Future Imperfect, once again pulling in the space dock with a lot more damage than I thought we were going to take. So until next time, from the great state of Michigan,
Aaron Pollyea.
From the mountains of Colorado,
Steve Megatron.
From the home of Downtown Elvis.
Downtown Elvis? What are you calling me that?
Story there.
Downtown
Elvis.
Oh, downtown. Yes. We have there is an Elvis that dresses up as Elvis. He has 2 or 3 different suits, and his entire day for the last 20 or 30 years has been picking up all the cigarette butts and smoking them. So yeah, that Kitchener Elvis. He doesn't ask for money. His suits are immaculately clean. He has the white suit. He has the blue one. He has looks like a homemade wig, and all he does is pick up cigarette butts. And yes, so Downtown Elvis, Alex.
So I've been.
It is more interesting watching him than it is watching
Discovery.
And there is the quote for the back of the box. So until next time, folks, I've been Mike the Birdman. And until next time, folks, live long and prosper.
At Toyota, safety's always included. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. Why would safety be extra? That's like buying a TV and finding out the remote is extra. It's time to Toyota. Lease a 2020 Corolla LE for as low as $60 weekly at 1.69% APR for 60 months with $0 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today. At Toyota, safety's always included. That's why our vehicles come with Toyota Safety Sense. It's a suite of intelligent safety features that other car companies charge extra for. Why would safety be extra? That's like buying a TV and finding out the remote is extra. It's time to Toyota. Lease a 2020 Corolla LE for as low as $60 weekly at 1.69% APR for 60 months with $0 down. Ask your local Ontario Toyota dealer about contactless shopping or to book an appointment today.